I believe we can start with the session. Yeah. So once again, thank you so much everyone for joining. We are moving ahead with the 6th session of Profile Building Fair, Demonstrating English Proficiency. Demonstrating English proficiency is an integral component of your college application, and earlier you get this in place, the better. In this session, you will learn about the best and the most convenient tool to demonstrate English proficiency, Duolingo English Test with John Nesbitt. Before I pass it over to John, I would like to give a brief introduction of him. John is the Strategic Engagement Manager for the Duolingo English Test. Before joining the EdTech startup space in 2018, he worked for his alma mater, Vanderbilt University. John worked at Vanderbilt for 12 years and was the co-chair of International Admissions Enrollment Management, and he traveled extensively in Asia, Europe, Middle East, and South America, including India for 5 years. With a deep understanding of international admissions testing, John was drawn to the innovation and accessibility of the Duolingo English Test. Welcome, John. Our pleasure to have you with us today, and I pass it over to you to take the session ahead.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Students, hello, my name is John. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. We already are saving some time. We're already heading into slide 2. You heard enough about me. Biggest thing I'll underscore there was just my time and experience at Vanderbilt University as an admissions officer and co-chair of international admissions for a number of years. So you might hear that influence and that part of my background kind of sneak into my presentation here a couple times, as I might speak from that voice of the former admissions officer, as I know exactly what it's like to sift through and wade through and read thousands and thousands of applicants and applications from around the world and try to make the call on who's the best fit for a university. So I know what universities are looking for. And I look forward to spending some time today to tell you a little bit more about how you can demonstrate your English proficiency with the Duolingo English Test, as well as giving you a little bit of insight as far as how it fits within the profile building part of your application and why English scores are required. We'll get into a little bit of an overview of the test as well as the organization, how to make sure you can test your best, and also give you a little bit of a discount, 10% off code that will be at the very end of my presentation. So just quickly, why English proficiency comes up in the process. Why is it part of your profile that you need to build? It depends on, of course, where you're applying, but if you're looking at the US, it's really used less as a metric or something that is going to be used from like the government side of we have to prove to the government or to somebody that these students that are coming in from this school in India or wherever it is have the right scores, but more from the ensuring that the student's going to thrive academically, that you're going to be okay in the classroom, but also that you're going to be able to thrive socially and in the community and getting to know friends and building all of that as well. And so we want to make sure that you're going to be able to come hit the ground running and be a full-fledged, very active student. And so that's why the English proficiency matters so much. There are some universities, of course, that will use it for maybe placement into first-year classes or even into an ESL. If you're looking into that, maybe an into or a pathway type program where you'll need a year of English or a semester of English before you enter the full 4-year undergrad experience. So it just depends. But I think one thing that's important to note is that oftentimes your Duolingo English proficiency score or your TOEFL or your IELTS or whatever your English proficiency scores you're looking at, those aren't going to be quite evaluated the same way as your grades or other pieces of the file are. It's often more of a yes, no. So I'll use Vanderbilt as the example where I used to work. You needed around a 125 on the DET. And so if you had that, great. Keep moving on. But if you had 110, you're a little bit below the line. And so at that point, you're not going to meet Vanderbilt's requirements. And so at that point, your application, unless there were some of the things going on that were really strong, you're probably at that point, the application's at that point finished because it's just more of a yes, no. Do you have this requirement? If you don't, it's a no. If it's yes, it's not a yes, you're going to get admitted. It's a yes, your application continues on down there on the line. And so a little bit about that. And then one other, I think, just important point before we get into more about the Duolingo English Test. would be the consistency within your profile across your test scores, across your CV, across your resume, across all the grades, the predicted grades, everything that you have. The English testing kind of fits in there, and what admissions officers are looking for, a consistency across your profile. And so that it all lines up, it all makes sense, and that we can hopefully get to a good, positive admissions decisions. Some common policies you'll see around the world of English proficiency. Our minimum score is a 130 on the DET, or applicants who succeed typically score above 120, or there's a test waiver policy of some kind. So pay attention to this. Yes, that's right. Here, I'm John from the Duolingo English Test telling you, you might not have to take the Duolingo English Test. And so before you take a test, make sure you even need to. There are so many schools out there that have a requirement where you can waive an English test. So for instance, at most schools, if you've spent 3 or 4 years of your secondary school, where you are kind of your high school, that final level of schooling, if that's been taught in English, most schools out there aren't going to require an English proficiency score. You can still take one, of course. If you're thinking, hey, I was in there, but my grades aren't as good as I'd like to maybe have some other strong points in my application, by all means, you can, of course, take it. But do know there are a lot of policies out there where you might be exempt from even taking an English proficiency score. So know and do your research before you actually pay the money to take a test. Subscores can or cannot play a role, just depends. As you've probably already figured out by now, a lot of policies for admissions decisions in the US are really, it all depends. You're gonna hear something completely different at Northwestern, or something different at Northeastern, or something different at University of Texas, right? So each school might have a slightly different policy. And last but not least, unlike an SAT or an ACT, having a near perfect score on an English proficiency examination, regardless which one you take, isn't going to play the same role as like a perfect SAT, or having 44 predicts on your IB or something. It's much more going back to what I said previously, a yes or no. Do you have a strong enough score, or do you not? And then here's just one quick example of what you'll see at different universities. This is from our good friend Ruby at Barnard. I'm certain if any of y'all are looking at Barnard, but there you can see exactly their policy. You could take these, or you could indicate that English is your first language, or if you've attended English school. So there you go. Policy at Northeastern, etc. And then here's just a quick bit of a slide to show you a little bit about what those scores mean. You heard me throwing out some numbers, maybe a 120 on the Duolingo English Test. You can see, let's work backwards, that on the Common European Framework of Reference Scale, C1 or C2 are the highest levels. And so 120 to 160, the highest scores on our test. C1 or C2, the highest levels, above a 7.5 on the IELTS, or around 100 and up on the TOEFL are kind of the score comparisons there. We'll show a little bit more about that. There's also more information online. So quick background for our test. Some of you are probably familiar, or our organization, with Duolingo, the language app. I don't know how many of you all use the app. Feel free to raise your hand. That's wonderful. We teach over 30 different languages around the world and have users in every single country in the world. But what some people don't know is that our founder actually is from Guatemala, and had a similar experience to what you're going through right now, and that he was also a high school student in another country trying to apply to college in America. He ended up coming to the States and went off, obviously, to have a wonderful career. He's MacArthur Fellow, etc. A wonderful man, but also created this beautiful product that's all about teaching language and helping people around the world increase their opportunities and increase their social mobility. And so the Duolingo language app has been instrumental and groundbreaking in helping those. But he had experience like you, as I was saying before, where he went to sign up for a TOEFL, and lo and behold, there were no more seats left in his country. And so as a 17-year-old, he had to travel to a neighboring country. He had to go to El Salvador, which wasn't as safe. And it was quite a weekend for him just to try to prove his proficiency. And so as we were developing the technology to create a fully online, artificially intelligent exam, that's a computer adaptive test, he started thinking back to, surely something's changed from the TOEFL or the IELTS. And of course, as we created this test about 6 years ago, we were the first digital online examination for English proficiency. The others have started to develop some online tools, but we were the first to do that. And so our mission is to use that technology to lower barriers and increase opportunities with our tests. And so the traditional testing model, of course, you need to book a date, whether that's for one of the new online tests, because they're going to use proctors that are in your session. And that's a little different. For Duolingo, it's asynchronous proctoring. And so you're never having to sign up or register for a date and a time because there's no one actually watching your test live. It's going to be recorded and viewed by proctors afterwards. And so, quite an experience when you're going through one of these traditional testing models, plus the long testing time. Our test, of course, is accessible, taken in over 200 countries. You have a very affordable cost of only $49 US. In addition to the scores, you're going to get a video interview and a writing sample, which the universities see and really appreciate having those 2 or 3 minutes of a video interview to identify further with you, get to know you better, and also just get a little bit of a gut check of your English ability. It's a fast test, so not only is the test only an hour, but you get your results back in 2 days' time. Reliable, as well as a super secure experience, not only using the remote proctoring, but throughout the test itself, many different features that are making sure that it is a secure test. It's also part of the security of the test is that it's an adaptive test. So it's a completely different experience for everyone who takes the test because it adapts to each individual user. We have an enormous item bank of questions and item types. And so you'd have to take the test around 1,000 times before you'd see any questions repeated. So all part of the security and the reliability of the test. So when you're testing with Duolingo, you can wake up that morning and decide tomorrow, hey, I'm going to take the Duolingo English test. Or you could start preparing and then decide later in the month or next year. You tell us when you want to take it. You only need 1 hour in a well-lit room where you are alone and you have great Wi-Fi. And of course, you're not only going to save time and money, but a lot, I think, is saving some of that stress. A lot of our test design is going around trying to lower test taker anxiety, make the test taker experience smoother, better, etc. So that is the experience with Duolingo. And quickly, that test process, it's about an hour in duration. Over the next 2 days, it will go through the certification process where it's not only reviewed by artificial intelligence to ensure that you followed all the rules and that it was a secure test environment, but also go through rounds of human proctoring as well. Again, this is asynchronous. So no one is sitting in the test room with you. So a little bit more of a private test experience. After the test has been certified, you then go online and can share your test results with any number of universities out there. And then, of course, the universities love the test because it syncs automatically into their CRMs or their Slate where they read the actual files. And so it just lines up right inside their system. So when they go to your file in a few days' time, that DET test score has been added into your file and they can proceed with their review. So quickly on the test overview side, again, no test centers. It's fully online. It's on demand any time of day and around $49. Most importantly, it is unlimited sharing. And so we're not going to charge you more money down the line. You take the test, it's certified. It's valid for 2 years, just like any other major test. And of course, you can share it with unlimited number of schools. I mentioned a little bit about the comprehensive nature of the test. Not only do you get subscores, but you're getting to see that video interview and writing sample. The test itself is under an hour in time. Again, it's because the faster test, because it's an adaptive test. And so let's pretend for a moment like it's a math test. And I ask you 2 plus 2 and you say 4. And I say 4 times 4 and you say 16. And then I say, well, wonderful, what's the square root of 183? These are very different levels of difficulty in these questions I just gave you, right? And so if you understand the square root of 183 like that, and that's just something that you've got, you're obviously at a high level of math. And so we don't need to spend another hour or two asking you 1 minus 1. It's lower than your level. We instead can spend this hour of the test exactly in your zone and in your range and giving you questions that are testing you to the hardest, that are going to feel very hard and challenging because we understand from this computer adaptive test exactly what your ability is, and we can really test you on that. So students come out of that test saying that it was fun, but also almost always saying that it was very hard. And the reason being is that for everybody who takes it, we're going to put you on that limit. We're going to put you right where you feel comfortable and where you can maybe do a little bit better or maybe where you miss a little bit. But that helps us understand exactly what your ability is. We mentioned the security already. I'll move on just for the sake of time. A couple other points of that security. You mentioned, or you heard me mention the secure design, the fact that you'd have to take the test over 1,000 times before you'd see a question repeated. Of course, also that remote proctoring is a big part of the experience as well. And then also that we are using AI as well as data forensics to not only detect potential rule violations, but also to continue to stay ahead of the loop and identify patterns and making sure that our test is always as secure as possible. A little bit more on the security, you're going to have a valid ID. That's part of the test onboarding experience. At that point, we're going to go through what's known as a browser lockdown. So you cannot use your computer to do anything else while you're taking our test. Basically, it takes over. You can't have any other apps running. You can't have any plugins running. You couldn't have Grammarly running to help you with any of the writing samples, etc. It's just you and the test, and that's it. No Wi-Fi or no internet or no web pages. Nothing else is happening at all. And then, of course, that video sample is just one more way that universities can identify, say, yes, this is who that student says they are. Here's an actual sample of them speaking. So it goes a little beyond just seeing, in a score. In the old world, when I was in admissions, we might just see, 105 on a TOEFL come through, and you just had to say, okay, I guess that student has this level of ability in English, and that's it, and take it. It was a little bit more black and white. But now with the Duolingo English test, you can say, okay, that student's score is around 120 on the DET. And now let's actually watch 2 or 3 minutes of this student speaking and make sure that they really do have strong skills that fit our university's need. And from that proctoring side, again, it depends a little bit if you're doing an online test or you're at a traditional testing center. But in the traditional testing center environment, you have one proctor to 25 plus students. And in our test, you're going to have multiple rounds of proctors. And so you might have 3 or 4 different people watching your test, on typical at least 2. And so you're going to have 2 people plus the artificial intelligence. So really, it's almost more like a 3-to-1 ratio compared to another test being more like 1 to 25. So very secure, reviewed and proctored test. And again, I mentioned this earlier, the test scale again, let's drop down to this 120, 160 level. Again, kind of where a lot of the more selective universities are. You're going to find then the next level, which would be what's known as B2 in the Common European Framework. Kind of the scores in the 90 to 115. This will be for a lot of universities. Anything right around that 90, maybe in the 80s as we get down to that B1 level might often be a pathway or an into maybe a 2-year college or community college route. It just depends on where it is that you're looking to go. You can find more information online as well. All right, I'll spend the final 8 or 9 minutes here talking about how to prepare to test your best when it comes time to taking the Duolingo English test. For starters, again, everything you kind of heard about our mission with the language app being a free way to improve students' education and abilities and opportunities. The whole mission of our organization, one of the things that defines us, I think, and kind of the Duolingo difference is that we're the only test with a full-fledged access program. And so we make it very easy for students to get free tests if they need them. We work with a number of organizations out there. We also provide free tests directly to universities. And so universities can also work with you as a student to provide free tests. For anyone who's a part of the Next Genius Scholarships program as well, all those scholarship recipients also receive free Duolingo English tests. So there's a lot out there, but this also carries through with how we process and run everything, including test readiness or test prep. It's all free. Again, go alone. The practice tests are free. And so the best thing you can do is spend 30, 45 minutes, maybe even more, taking a few of the practice tests, getting familiar with what item types are in the test, what that test environment looks like. And maybe this is the first time you've taken an online high stakes test. And so it's important just to get familiar with what that's like. Additionally, we have a wonderful test readiness guide. This is a free guide that you can download. It's about 80 pages. It has tips on the item types, on the question types, how to test your best, how to understand how the test works, how the scoring works, review more sample questions, get ready. And so if you're planning on taking the Duolingo English test, whether that's this spring or later this summer or fall, go ahead and go online and download this readiness guide and review that. First, take a few practice tests and you'll be ready to go. So I can't reiterate this enough. This is all free. These are free resources. This it is night and day different from what else is out there. Generally speaking, a test prep that comes with hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And going somewhere where people are gonna tell you the secrets, and they're gonna give you those shortcuts and the ways to really make sure you can get the highest score. And with us, it's a little bit less of understanding how to maybe gamify the test and how to maybe get the highest score possible, versus just understanding your ability of English and how you can test your best. So use those free resources. When it comes time for you to take the test, you'll want to make sure that your test environment is ready. So not only are you going to need that ID, you're going to need that quiet, well-lit room. You'll need just about an hour's worth of time. Really important, a reliable internet connection. What happens sometimes out there, power outages, Wi-Fi goes out, whatever's going on where you are living, where maybe, oh my gosh, my test just stopped. What happened? What's going on? Go immediately to your email that you are signing up for your account with, and you'll have instructions from our support team that goes out automatically. If you experience any sort of troubleshooting issues, they'll give you all those options and directions on how to troubleshoot. And most importantly, they'll also extend a special code for you to be able to take the test again. So we're never going to charge you again if you go through some sort of internet, Wi-Fi, or computer type of tech issue. We'll send you instructions and we'll give you a code. Really important, though, that you are alone in that room and that you have really good Wi-Fi. So if that means kicking your family out of the house for the afternoon, or making sure that everyone's off of Wi-Fi, or if your neighbors are using your Wi-Fi, or whatever's going on, make sure that you have all the Wi-Fi bandwidth you need to be able to go ahead and take that test. Additionally, you'll see supported browsers. The front-facing camera is important. You have to have a working microphone, of course, and a speakers, as you'll be an interactive test. You'll be talking, you'll be speaking, you'll be recorded, you'll be typing, you'll be doing all sorts. Understand the test rules is really important. So a few things that you need to understand, in addition to a few more rules that you can find out there. You can't have headphones or earphones. You cannot look off screen. This is the biggest rule that's violated, is people look off screen. It happens sometimes just very briefly, right? Like me, I just looked up to see what the chat was that came in. Something very minimal, probably going to be okay. But if you're constantly looking off, that's going to be a clear violation. It could be that someone else snuck into your room after the test started and now you're getting answers, let's say, right? So we want to make sure that you're looking at the screen for the entire test time. Again, I mentioned before, no plugins or any outside programs. No one else is in the test environment. And you cannot have any outside devices. So no other phones, no other notepads, pens, nothing else can be in the room. It's just you and the laptop. At the end of the test, you'll come into the video interview and writing sample portion. Currently, these are unscored. These are just additional samples that are used for universities to kind of get a sense of who you are and what you want to say. The nice thing too, let me just back up 1 second. Again, back to removing test taker anxiety. A few years ago, one of the small redesigns was actually adding this title screen that gives you 2 topics. And so we found that it was a little bit stressful and a little bit difficult for students to only be given 1 essay question or 1 video interview question. So instead, we give you 30 seconds before the video interview to choose which of the 2 questions you want to answer. You're going to get a question. Great, that's the one I want to go with. And whenever you're ready, within 30-second window, you hit next and you go in and you record that video interview, in which case you'll have up to 3 minutes to respond to one of those questions. Same thing goes for the writing sample. You'll have 2 questions. You'll have 30 seconds to decide which of the questions fits you best. Which one do you feel most comfortable with? And then you'll go ahead and write. This time you'll have 3 to 5 minutes. Do know that you can review your responses before you share your results, but that those universities do receive those results. So in some cases in the admissions world, they'll be listening to those video interviews while they read your file. In other cases, maybe a place like UCLA that gets a whole lot of applications from around the world, they'll tell you they won't have time to watch the interview. They're going to be looking just at your score. So again, going back to what I said before, it all kind of depends on the university. And then the last thing I'll say before I open up for questions and answers, again, the test process, we mentioned this before, just wanted to show it one more time. You'll sign up to take the test. We recommend the practice test. It's not required, but we do recommend it. It'll help you test your best. You'll purchase that test or apply a coupon, whether that's 10% off or a full free test. You'll need an hour to take the test. And then once you get it back, you can share it with unlimited universities. We're currently accepted by over 308 programs around the world, from some of the top programs like Yale or Duke or Columbia, to schools around Canada, Australia, UK, places like McGill, et cetera, are taking our test. You can go on and find out. If you want to see fellow students and their journeys and kind of what they experienced when they do Duolingo English Test and when they came to the United States for college, we have a wonderful YouTube channel that has these stories and more. And then the last thing I'll say before I open it up to questions, here is a code for you, Genius100222W. If you apply that code until March 18th, you'll get 10% off. So go ahead and write that down. That's the code. And this is what will come up on the screen. You'll see a apply code. When you go to pay for the test, click in apply code, add that code in, and then it will give you that 10% off. So let me go and check the chat. If you have any questions now, feel free to share your screen or stay off screen and just unmute yourself and ask a question. We also have a wonderful FAQ online that has everything you could need and more. We have an online chat, so you can chat one-on-one with one of our wonderful support agents, or you can email our support team in English Test _support@duolingo.com. A couple questions I got through chat. I'll try to chime in here. And then if there's anything else coming through, just feel free to let me know.
Thank you, John, for the wonderful session, wonderful, insightful session on English proficiency, sharing why it is important. And we're talking about how the Duolingo English Test tool can help students give the test with ease and from comfort of their home. Yes, we have a question. Is that does good English proficiency imply to a strong vocabulary and very good fluency, or conveying the message in the most simplest and easiest way to the audience with decent fluency?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And it's going to take those things into consideration as more. And so things like vocabulary diversity, like the array of the words that you understand, things like fluency. So how much could you maybe write? Let's just use the writing question as an example. Like, how much can you get out in 3 to 5 minutes? To the complexity of your grammar, to the understanding of the grammar. And so there's about 9 or 12 different things that we're going to be taking into consideration when we are scoring. If you want to find out more, that free test readiness guide that I mentioned, there's more details in that guide and more online. That's a wonderful question.
Thank you, John, for answering that question. I would just request you to put the code in the chat box if you can,
yes,
so that students can get the access to it. And I would like to add one last thing, that all Next Genius partner colleges accept the Duolingo English Test. So yes, you can go ahead and take the test. And thank you, John, for putting that code in the chat box. And it was wonderful having you here today with us, sharing knowledge about Duolingo English Test.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Students out there, best of luck. I know that sometimes it can be a little stressful learning about all the different tests, all the different things you need to be doing, how to apply. But trust me, I can tell you from my experience in the field, what waits you when you arrive to college, whether that's next year or years down the line, it's going to be worth it in spades. You're going to love your experience, the learning, the social aspect, everything about it. And so best of luck on the journey. When it gets tough, know that the end of this journey really is worth all of it. So good luck to you all on your journeys. Best of luck. And thank you again for your time today. That link I shared will get you 10% off. Otherwise, you can find all answers to your questions online. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Kajol, and thank you, John, for that